Yes, so we're on. So now you don't have to say anything that might be incriminating and held against you and used in evidence, etc. Blah blah blah, and for the prosecution or for the acquittal. I'd like to share a screen. Oh, here we go. Have you all had a look at the AITSL website?
Yes.
I highly recommend you do. Share it. Yeah. So can you see my screen with Alpha Crucis, Appendix Z, blah, blah, blah? Okay. So today is Tuesday, the 20th. No, it's the 30th of July, 2019. And we're talking about the APT, the Teaching Performance Assessment, for which we've had one student through, Victoria, so far. And we've got a whole bunch more coming up this semester. And it'd be really great to hear from you, Victoria. And I'd like to go through the material. While you're thinking of what you might say in terms of reflection, Victoria, let me just tell you a bit of sort of technical background. We did the first trial in semester 1 this year with one student, Victoria, and that's what I'm going to go through again today. However, we are talking to the Australian College of Physical Education, who've done some work which is very, very similar, but in terms of design, but a lot more fleshed out with templates. One of the things we don't have is templates, but they do. Now, because life has been crazy, I confess that I haven't got to implementing their model yet. So we're going ahead with Plan A, which we had last semester, refining it, yes, but not substantially changing it. So that it's going to be fine. It will be perfectly legit in terms of your qualifications. So none of you need to have to worry at all about that. So Victoria, give us a bit of chat on how you found the TPA.
It wasn't actually as daunting as I thought it would be. I thought it would be quite challenging, but really, I guess the thing that you've got to know, or you've got to figure out pretty quickly is what subject you're going to base your assessment on, because in the 4 components, you have to, in the assessment component, you have to collect data at the start of the prac and then at the end. So you've got to establish pretty soon into your placement what that's going to be. So I did maths, and it was kind of convenient for me because they'd just done like a formative test like 2 weeks before I came on addition strategies. So I took that, and then I worked with one of the other year 4 teachers to plan to figure out what we were going to teach so that we could hit the areas where a lot of the kids had issues with. And then in the last week of my placement, I just did like a topic test with the kids focusing on those areas and was able to show improvement. I think, you've also got to really get to know your students so that you can easily determine which ones are at the bottom, the middle, and the top. I didn't actually pick them straight away. I sort of ended up picking them like halfway through the placement once I'd got a bit more of an idea and could look at their work a bit more, engage it. So it sort of changed in my mind, like maybe 3 or 4 times before I actually finally picked them. But I think that was okay. What else?
Well, other things I'm sure will come to you, Victoria. That is a great summary, particularly your opening line. You found it less daunting than you had feared. I think that is true. There are some things around the TPA which sound incredibly daunting when you've never done one. And of course, you couldn't, Victoria, you couldn't ask me because we'd never done one anyway. And you should all know that every uni in the country is grappling with this new assessment.
Oh, and sorry, can I add something? Something else that you will have to grapple with is the schools that you go into, because a lot of the schools have not been faced with it yet. I was the first one in the school that I went to, and they had a strictly no videoing or recording protocol. So I had to work around that, and I had to be polite about it, but at the same time I was like, this is a requirement by Canberra now, and you're going to face this like from a lot of students now. So yeah, you've just got to figure out ways around it.
Yeah, on the videoing recording thing, I've been in touch with other unis, and they basically, the ones in Sydney have by and large not had an issue with recording. They've been happy for that to happen. But the schools up in the northern part of New South Wales, rural, blanket, no, you're not touching a video or an audio recording at all. So the unis have been up in arms about this requirement, and therefore Canberra's gone back and accommodated an alternative approach.
Can I ask a question?
Please.
Yeah, I'm just going to say, is the video recording of us teaching, or is it of the children?
You teaching.
Okay.
Primarily.
Yeah. But the kids don't have to be in it.
No, not certainly not focused back of heads and things. But we'll talk about that. Okay, well, look, that is a great introduction, Victoria. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Let me just wander through this document, which is on EDU 500, and it's on EDU 500. I'm just pausing there because I was trying to think, do we have anybody in bachelor's doing it this semester? And I don't think we do. But even if we do, what we say here will be exactly the same as for them. So these are notes at the back end, the last appendix of the manual, Appendix Z, and I'll give you access to this, easy access to this after this recording. First thing to note, Australian Professional Standards for Teachers, they basically come out of Canberra, AITSL, and NESA badged them up as their own. What I've found in the last year, they've started referring to them as GTSDs, Graduate Teacher Standard Descriptors.
Okay.
So they just love to change the names. They were the APSTs, they're now the GTSDs.
Ah, really?
Yeah. So it's exactly the same thing. So don't freak about that. So this paragraph here, which, can you all see that? Let me make it a wee bit
just taking
bigger.
a note.
This paragraph here, the GTSD's numbering system to be used in the TPA taken from NESA version of the Australian Professional Standards for Teachers. Please note that while there are 37 descriptors, evidence does not have to be presented to meet all of these 37. Now, that's, you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and the various subparts. And if you do the maths, that comes to 37, apparently. I haven't done that, I've just taken it for granted. But the point being that you may end up in a school that, for example, has no Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders, in which case you cannot demonstrate the APSTs that relate to that. You may have a school that actually has no special needs kids in your class, in which case you'd be struggling to meet those GTSDs. So please don't freak. The way I look at this, you have to meet these standards. That's up to me, the tertiary supervisor, in conjunction with your mentor, agreeing that you would, or you potentially would, if you had the opportunity, meet that standard. And
Okay.
it doesn't really mean that I have to see, or a video has to watch, or a mentor has to see. They can interpolate that you would, given the situation. In other words, your skill level, your knowledge level is up there, so that you would if you had to. Get me?
Mm-hmm.
So don't freak about that. These words here, I think, are very interesting. Evidence and annotations. Evidence, in that word there, I think in terms of gaining samples of the student's work at the front end and at the back end of your placement. And there's no stipulation as it has to be the first lesson, the second lesson, the third lesson. It doesn't have to be as rigid as that. Just at the front and at the back. And that we, as a college, we have a 4-week placement, which actually, if you look at the majority of other colleges and unis, we're actually shorter than most. Some have 6 weeks, some have 8 weeks, some have a whole term. We have 4 weeks. So the other unis will have fewer but longer placements, and it may be, in inverted commas, easier for them to demonstrate that you're meeting the standards over a longer period of time. Whereas you've only got 4 weeks to do it in. So don't feel bad about that. That's out of your control. That's what we've got at the minute. And so far in our discussions with the authorities, they're happy that we should have the 4 weeks still. It maybe next year it will change, but at the moment it's 4. So evidence is, scores, data from assessments, whatever, that sort of word. Annotations really rings bells for me of your reflections, your notes, added notes, annotations on their work, your documentation. You're adding notes, and the more notes you can add to the documents that demonstrate that you have reflected deeply after the fact, the better. And on the next page, get used to the fact that you're called a TES, not a pre-service teacher. That was the old language. You're now called a teacher education student, a TES. Etc., etc. So let me just briefly go through, and then look, it's got to be loads and loads of questions from you. So let me just go for another 5 or 6 minutes. The teaching performance assessment conducted in the final placement, within the final placement. Yeah, XP, EXP 312 or EDU 500C. It replaces the e-portfolio, but I would strongly suggest you still keep an e-portfolio alive and well in your life, but you no longer have to submit that. So our motivation was, we don't want you to have another assignment. So we were happy to remove that requirement because we're putting in place the TPA. You remember, for 500C, you don't have the observational journal. That's only for A and B. The TPA reflects the elements of planning, teaching, assessing, and reflecting. And if you get one thing today, it's those 4 words. It's a 4-fold assessment, assessing your ability to plan, your ability to teach, your ability to assess, and your ability to reflect. Each section is equally weighted, 25%. TPA is a summative assessment which reflects the realistic practices of teachers. And yeah, we've talked about the number of GTSDs. Each element of those 4 has to be passed. That's point D there. So if you failed on one of them, you did really well on the other 3, that wouldn't mean you passed the TPA. You've got to pass all 4. And when I say pass, it's a simple pass or fail. Reached it or you haven't reached it. Within each of the 4 elements, a pass grade is at least 75% of the criteria are judged to be just met or clearly met. This is a bit of jargon. It doesn't really worry you. It never worried Victoria. It never came anywhere near her. A maximum of 25% of the criteria are judged to be nearly met. None of the criteria means you've not met the requirement. That's a bit of jargon. I wouldn't worry about that. So this table here shows you the 4 elements, and you have various items to submit, 3, 3, 3, and 4 for each of the sections, and you get 25% of the weighting for each of those 4 elements. Video audio protocol. Video is used as an artifact of the teacher education student to allow them to reflect. So the whole idea, if you can get a video of a lesson or a segment of a lesson for you, it's wonderful, because you can then play that back and you can reflect on your own practice. That's the point of the videoing, for you to hear and see yourself. And what I'm doing as your assessor is reflecting and assessing the quality of your reflection on your practice. So if we don't have the video and audio, we'll manage, but that's what it's there for ideally. And I noticed Victoria's language, she asked politely, but obviously the school can't be forced to do anything it doesn't want to do. So the camera should focus on the teacher and the 3 students that have been identified, so they should be in the shot if you're going to get to do a video. Students for whom consent has not been obtained should be seated so they don't appear in the camera or the recording. In addition, video footage still frames can be extracted from the video and utilized for reflection. So there's a bit of protocol, a bit of toing and froing. We had 2 students in Western Australia who were looking into this, and they got the no videoing either. Assessment and moderation. TPA will be subject to internal semester-based moderation, as we normally do, and the tertiary supervisor will be trained for that assessment, but also we'll be sharing your work with other colleges so that we get the same standard, all being well, compared to them. Other small private providers. So this lot here identifies what you need to submit, what to submit here, and these are the GTSDs, all the numbers there. The asterisk mean that may not be required. We did have a chat, Victoria and I, about whether 3 was a sensible number of students to get samples from, but the point is, it was pointed out maybe one of them is going to go sick, and then you're going to be left with only 2 to submit at the end of the whole exercise. Anyway, this other college, Australian College of Physical Education, they said stick to the 3 because life happens, and if you end up with only 2 to submit, so be it. Don't make more work for yourself, they said. So okay, we won. So we're sticking.
Sorry, can I just say something?
Yeah.
That was also why I didn't pick my 3 students till like halfway through, because there was one girl that I really wanted to use, but she was sick for like a week, and I was like, oh, Okay, so I had to sort of adjust it depending on sickness and stuff, but
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's probably wise to sort of don't jump before you really have to. So yeah, take a bit of time to get to know your students. And I thought what you said, Victoria, about knowing your students is absolutely crucial. So, you know, your first week, don't let TPA become anything like a big burden. Put that way to a side and focus on getting to know your kids. That's a crucial groundwork for helping you with the selection process. So let me just go. Look, I'll pause. I've rambled it on too long. Questions so far, and I'll maybe come back to some more stuff later.
I have a question.
Yeah, Lauren.
Is there anything that the mentor teacher has to create for us? That was the thing that, no? Okay.
No.
So there's no like additional, you know how like with the 500 A, B, and C's, they have to submit like reflection and feedback. There's nothing like that here.
No. That reminds me, basically Canberra and NESA haven't produced anything in terms of communication to schools about the TPA. So the first thing that these schools are hearing about it very often is when the prac teacher rolls up and says, I've got a TPA now. And they say, what's that? Which is really embarrassing for the teacher. It's so unprofessional. A meeting I went to maybe March, NESA did agree that it was going to put out a circular. So maybe soon they will. I do get the impression that that website, the AITSL website, which I think is pretty good, may be being rolled out to schools as a means of telling schools what's going on. But we felt that it's enough for the mentor teacher to do the mentoring of our student without asking them to do an extra burden of assessment. No, to me, this is an exercise that you do, you collate, and your powers of administration are actually being tested here. I've seen 2 examples with TPA from this other college. One was superbly packaged. It was hard copy in their case. You knew exactly, this is planning, this is submission 1, this is submission 2, this is submission 3. But the other student, oh boy, you had to wade through pages and find, you had to guess. It was so hard, so hard. And they brought their own marking down because they made it hard for the assessor. So you've got to be really organized in the submission of this documentation prior.
Okay.
There is a lot of forms though to submit still, isn't there? Like your normal graded profile and all that.
Well,
Oh.
look, in the future, we are going to go for a template thing. But if you look here, and I'll come back to this when I go back on my second train of thought. There's a document here. It's not much. It's 300 words. I think we said, didn't we?
Yep.
Victoria, it's basically a really condensed, concise set of notes about the context. Lesson plans is a lesson plan. And the format, again, doesn't matter. It depends on what the school wants to use and what you want to use. And again, a paragraph, teaching, assessment, rationale. So you write up some notes on justifying why you're going to assess your kids and the way you're going to assess your kids.
Where are you reading from? Sorry, Jim.
On the first table.
Okay.
To what I should be on the screen, on my shared screen. Can you see that?
Okay, so you're reading from that first.
Yeah,
section.
I was the right-hand column there. What to submit?
Oh, can't see it.
You can't see it.
I've got to move the faces.
Oh, the faces are covering it up.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Can I add something, Jim?
Yeah.
With point 1, but for the community, school, and student profile, just a tip for you guys. My mentor teacher helped me a lot with that part, because he just was like, I've got all their information on my computer. He was like, I'll give you the suburbs that they live in, and then you can look up the socioeconomic status of that suburb and then figure out their socioeconomic status, which I think was part of what we had to do.
Which
So
is helpful.
Yeah, that's just a quick thing
Yeah.
to help you guys.
I mean, but nobody's going to go and check you. If you don't have access to that sort of data, then please just use your common sense and work out what sort of a community it is.
Yeah.
You know, you've got to be it's the powers of observation. Is it multicultural? Is it middle class? Whatever. Any more questions for now?
Yeah, another question. So with the lesson A that you have to observe, is that overlapping with your other observation as well? So it's not an additional one that you're coming in to see?
No, it wasn't an additional.
But it would happen at the beginning of the prac, I'm assuming, right?
That is an issue, yes.
Yeah. Because I'm thinking aloud, my prac starts next week, so sorry.
The downside of that, and with Victoria, what I did is I went to the end of your second week. Is that right?
No, I think you came in the first week.
The end of the first week.
Yeah, Thursday of the first week.
I haven't really worked that out, Lauren, and that is a very, very good question, because I think that I don't want this to negatively impact on your 500C, your ordinary assessment for that. Because normally I come in the last couple of days, and you've really got your feet under the table and you know all the kids' names and blah, 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 blah. And off you go. And you're at your best, all being well, in your last week. So that is an issue. Don't know the answer yet, sorry. But thank you for the reminder. Any more questions for now? Nancy, are you coping?
Yeah, that's all right. I feel really sleepy all of a sudden. So are you going through these points? Because I guess that's where my questions would come out of.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, we'll do that.
Yep.
Okay. So the first part is planning. So you haven't taught a thing yet. You know, this section is simply collating information, doing your plans, talking with your mentor teacher. So that's all that's about. And then this is your conventional, if you like, the teaching is what you would be doing normally on 500C. So in this case, the TPA is exactly on top of, it's the same thing as 500C. It's your teaching. So here you have your lesson observation by your tertiary supervisor giving you feedback. You see, this is why, going back to you, Lauren, this is why observer feedback for lesson A, we call it, is ideal if you get feedback at the front end of your placement, so that you can work on that through to the end. Now, whether or not I see it or whether the mentor sees you at the end is a moot point. So, but to me, the value here is the observer feedback of a lesson. And that's, I hope, immensely valuable. That's the point. And for the second input for teaching, it's gone over the page. I'm sorry about video audio recording of a lesson B. So that was lesson A, physically observed. B is at another time a lesson that you choose, you can select. Now, if you can't get to video or audio record it, you can, this is Victoria's workaround, you record the lesson on a piece of paper. You write down objectively what happened. So it's not a lesson plan, it's a, if you like, a diary of events. Jane threw up, a bird flew the window, the kids left a whole pile of rubbish at the end of the lesson. So you're not making any judgments, but you're just stating facts.
Right.
So you submit that as an alternative to, so, you know, imagine, what can a video can't lie. So you basically got to not lie. You write down what happened, the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Question, you said video or audio? I don't know if that was just a slip.
Yeah,
Because if they won't let me video, could I just bring in like a voice recorder and record my voice?
The ideal from Canberra is video. If you can't do that, you do audio. If you can't do that, if they won't let you do that, then you can do the written recording after the fact.
Okay.
And 2 sets of worked samples, so from 3 students. Now, let me just have a little word about that. Personally speaking, I like that to come in as PDFs. I personally, my computer is allergic to zip files, so please don't zip. But by all means, you know, have multiple pages into a PDF of some kids' work. You know, for this, if it's 3 students, it would be nice if there were 3 PDF files. 1 for each student. Student A, B, and C. And so when you upload them to Moodle, there they are, the 3 samples. Yeah. So that's what the teaching thing is about. And the assessing. So here you need to generate criteria, a rubric that you've used to assess students' work. You need to have assessed students' work and the feedback on it. And by that, I mean not simply tick, cross, 18 out of 20. Ideally, constructive feedback that you've given kids on their work. So yes, typically it would be red ink on blue or black writing, and your annotations showing your feedback for the student. And here we go again, annotated lesson plans. So you write in, you know, your reflections and notes on the lesson plans that you've submitted. Okay. Annotated lesson plans to demonstrate how you differentiated planning for individuals, minimum of 3 students in your class based on your continuous assessment of their learning and progression. So this is what you do after you've finished your placement. You collate a whole bunch of documents and submit them. Point 2 here, provide evidence of the assessment of student work 3 and the feedback provided to the student, which focuses on student improvement and growth. See? That's the crucial point there. Provide evidence of the assessment of student work and the feedback provided to the student, which focuses on their improvement and growth. And if you want to know a bit more detail, you see all those GTSDs. If that language there, that point 2, is ambiguous to you at all, then look up the GTSDs for each of those, and that will give you a more three-dimensional color of what is being required. And I would say the most exciting bit is the last one, lesson plan evaluations. Now, lesson A, feedback commentary. So you write a little commentary on the feedback you got from me on lesson A. You write a commentary on the feedback you got presumably from your mentor for B, and you student learning reflections. So each of those is spelt out more in detail here. Referencing the submitted or recorded lesson B, evaluate and reflect on your teaching and growth in student learning within your teaching and learning sequence. So this is a journal, if you like. Provide a written commentary or reflection on the observer's feedback. The tertiary supervisor was as blind as a bat. He never saw the good things I did. All he did was ever complain about me. That probably wouldn't be a very good reflection. But, you know, be honest. I hope I'm constructive. Provide a written commentary reflection on a key focus area from your reflection on lesson B. So it's a bit like distillation. You know that when you make alcohol, maybe you don't. But if you distill alcohol, you're basically getting the essence out of the juice. So the absolute gems, what are the most important things you have to work on, what's the tip of the iceberg for lesson B? What you really, really want to focus on. So this is what reflecting is all about. It's continuously refining till you can really focus on a key point. It says key focus area, singular, from your lesson B. Reflecting on your learning and progression of your 3 identified students after completion of the unit of work and the strategies you've used as the teacher to generate growth in their learning. So you sit back and say, okay, how was the whole exercise? How did it work for me? Was it successful? Did I feel that I can see the growth? To what degree can I see the growth? Where would I have done it differently if I had a go to do it again? And all that sort of stuff. Okay.
So that gets done when you come out of the placement, basically, or that reflection. Yeah.
And we never had any written up deadlines for submitting it. The only deadline really was when I was screaming for it, Victoria, because I needed it to get the marks in. And Victoria's placement, it wasn't anything of her fault. It was my fault for having too much to do. And then beyond that, you've got a whole bunch of rubrics, which, again, they were produced by another college, and we're going to modify these. I don't know, you comment, Victoria, but did you use these at all? Were they any help?
No, they were helpful. They helped me to see like the mark breakdown at the bottom of each one, so I could see which one was weighted a little bit more. And just the words did help a little bit, but I think there was sort of like a direct quote from the other rubric up the top. But I did use them quite a lot. So
okay.
Yeah.
They're there, and as I say, we have a lot to do, and your running through this process with us is going to be a huge benefit to us. we can't sort of draw up an assignment like this in a vacuum and expect to get it right first time. That's a bit ridiculous. So working with you, I think, is going to be really rewarding and highly valuable. More questions? So Nancy, how do you feel about it all?
Yeah, I'm a little bit tired, so I'm trying not to overthink it just right now. But I've written notes, so I think I would probably go into, on the day that I visit the school, I'll probably take this sheet and go through that teacher with them.
I found when I did that, my teacher was like, he was aware of it, but at the same time he was like, okay, cool, that's something you have to do, that's something I don't have to do that. So
yeah,
it sort of like fell back on me in the end, but it was really good to make sure that the teacher was aware of it.
yes, yeah,
and what they needed to do, if anything.
that's right, because then he'll look out for it, or he or she will look out for what you might need, because that's what my last teacher did anyway.
You see, I'm really keen that, I suppose in my thinking, I don't see why, if we go up to the first, where are the first samples of work? Victoria, help me.
Sorry.
Where do the samples come in at the beginning? Where's that one?
It's in point 2, teaching. No, yes. So on to the next page. Here. The student work.
2 sets of work, yeah. So when you're there, that's focusing on the front end of the placement, yes?
Yeah.
Okay, so you have two sets of work samples, the before and after. So that's there, and the other sample is
the assessed student work. But when I did my TPA, the assessed student of work and the second set from point 2 were actually the same piece of work.
Say that again.
So in point 2, the teaching point,
yeah,
here 2.3, if you want to call it that, the 2 sets of student work. I remember we talked about it. The formative set was the before I'd started my placement,
yes.
and then the summative set was in week 4, but it also doubled up as point 3.2, which is the
gotcha. Yes. So what I was thinking was that because our placement is 4 weeks, and I'm wanting you to capitalize on the mentor's data set and samples of work. It would be really nice, and I'm talking to you, Victoria, particularly, for you to be able to go up to your mentor and say, have you got 3 samples of work from your class, the ones I'm going to teach, that these kids have done, in the last few weeks, as in before I came. And then you do a comparable assessment at the end of your 4 weeks. And it's the contrast between what they were doing before you came, the standard they had reached by then, compared to the standard they'd reached by now. Rather than you having to necessarily create a formative assessment in the first week.
Right.
Yeah.
That would be really nice if you could talk sweetly to your mentor and say, please, can I have something from them? And they should be able to get it for you.
So that would be something that you've already got to pick the 3 students, or you get.
Well, once into week 1-ish, and you negotiate with your mentor, who do you think would be a great top, middle, and bottom, and And then once those names have been identified, then your mentor trots off and goes and gets you the samples.
Yeah. My mentor just gave me like all of the work samples from the test, like the whole class, and he was like, you can have it, look at it, pick your 3 students from that.
Okay.
So I don't know, maybe your mentor would be able to do that. Depends on the work samples that you pick. So
Yeah.
And so is the idea to actually, sorry if I'm butting in, is the idea to actually get a top, a middle, and a bottom, is it?
Yeah.
yeah, and then to show improvement of their learning through your teaching over the 4 weeks.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which is then reflected in the summative test that you do at the end.
Yep. And so does that actually say it in that document, sorry, Jim, the one that you're in now?
Say what?
This part about the 3 different levels, like when you're picking the 3 students?
Maybe.
Make sure that, yeah. So identify 3 students from the class that represent the range. Okay.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, it does. Now,
Okay.
one thing we haven't mentioned so far is the action research.
Yeah.
Now, Victoria, were you doing action research when you did this? No.
No.
Now, these guys are doing it. So it would, my feeling is that it would be great for your action research project to coincide with the formative and the summative assessment. In other words, in terms of your data gathering, you're collecting some evidence from before. No, this isn't going to work because this has been, well, maybe it potentially could. So you collect some evidence from before, you do your teaching in your new style teaching, and then you measure the impact of your innovation and you evaluate how well you've done. So this second set of work samples could very well be some of the data you get for your action research. It would be nice if you could double up that and save yourself the amount of extra work. I think that makes sense. So work it through with me, work it through yourself. I think it should make sense. Okay.
My stomach.
Anything else? Tulsi?
No.
No? Okay. Victoria, your last word. Come on.
I don't know, just, I think everyone says it, but make sure you're organized. Yeah, like it's, like I said before, it's not actually, it looks really big on paper, like especially with the rubrics, I got quite overwhelmed to begin with, but once you actually start walking through it, it's not that hard really. And it's like with the lesson plans, like it's like you're doing that every night anyway, so it's just like you're submitting that, and then I actually did quite enjoy doing the reflection at the end. Yeah, it really helped to pull everything together and help me to see what I did well and what I need to work on. So
good.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, look, I'm sorry it's been a bit long, 50 minutes. I think this might be my longest Zoom ever.
I reckon.
But there has to be a long one sometime. So I'll stop sharing. And I'm sorry we didn't get any of the other onliners, but they better be watching all this. And I'll see you people downstairs in a few minutes.
Okay.
And I'll see you, Victoria. All the
Yep.
best.
Bye, Victoria.
Bye.
Bye, Victoria.
See ya.
Bye.